So we are trying to understand, having seen how people make decisions and how people interact, how and why people interact, what's the logic behind people interaction? Isn't why do people come together and go for trade? And how does that trade benefits every party within the trade? Isn't it? So it has been, we understood how people make decisions, we have analyzed how people interact and why people interact, and we are trying to put all these things together and trying to understand how the economy as a whole works. And as part of it, I ended up simply saying the standard of living or well-being of a nation or the people of a nation or a society could be judged based upon what they produce. If people are producing a fighter plane, that has been, who producing a fighter plane? Someone who is not educated, who has not been to school cannot produce a fighter plane. If people are employed in producing a GS solution, a cryogenic engine, who is going to be that particular guy who is producing a cryogenic engine, who has been studied rocket science, who has know what is a cryogenic, isn't it? So that happens to be a very highly skilled, talented person. And if he happens to be a highly skilled, talented person, skilled person, then he happens to earn a lot of money. And he is earning a lot of money, he could buy better goods and services, isn't it? So that's how you can simply end up simply determining the well-being of a nation could be judged by what they are producing. That's basically, you never been to North Korea, you ended up simply concluding North Korea's standard of living would be one of the most worst. I don't know how many of you people are aware of the fact, my friends, in North Korea, the men in North Korea have no right to have not more than 9 different types of hairstyles. There are 9 hairstyles that this Kim Jong-un has come up with. You people have no right to have any display, any hairstyle other than these 9 different hairstyles. Got it, my friends? So, democracy in India, what is basically free, what is abundantly available in this country is freedom. What is equally available for all people in India, which is very much cheaper in India, is freedom. You can speak anything. You can say separate Kashmir, give it to Pakistan, and you are called an intellectual. That's what it is. In this country, who speaks better English is said to be a talented guy, and who speaks nonsense is said to be an intellectual. Isn't it? By that logic, 90% of those people who participate in TV debate are simply intellectuals, including the TV anchor who moderates the debate also. Because how could a same TV anchor could moderate debate on climate change, economics, and also social issues, and also geographical issues, and also science and technology? He would be debating on GSLV, he would be debating on Chandrayaan 2, he would be debating on economic topic. How could one guy who happens to be from art college in some Delhi university happen to debate on all such topics? Because they simply think they know everything. And that's why basically हमारे यहाँ पे TV debate में the moderator of the debate doesn't allow other people to speak. He himself comes with an agenda. No, whatever you say, it is wrong. What I say is only correct. So debate में what happens, there are 9 people and this one guy who moderates, 30 minutes, 28 minutes he would be speaking, 1 minute he would be giving it, and none of the people would make any comment. That's basically every media channel happens to be a propaganda channel. Isn't it? You cannot expect Sakshi would be writing something good about Naidu and he not expecting something, or Jyoti expecting something about her. Isn't it? Same is the case. NDTV, Nehru Dynasty Television. Get what I'm saying? Republic TV, they would never write English something, so Arnab Goswami would never say something against Mr. Modi, isn't it? And this guy, so Barkadat, this lady would never say something positive about Modi. They already had a fixed agenda. That's the basic reason why we insist you people to read only few papers. Even media people, English media people also have that particular, Times of India, it's a Bennett and Coleman company. And that has very good relations with the Congress family, first family. That's it, obviously. So that's the reason you need to come up with an opinion which is really neutral, not a biased opinion. Get what I'm saying? That's the basic reason we insist you to read only few newspapers. Coming back, the standard of living could be judged by looking at what kind of goods and services they produce. And the 9th principle happens to be prices rise when government prints more money. Prices rise when government prints more money. Let me ask you a simple question. Why do you need money? Let's say we are all in the Stone Age. That barbarians, you remember, you might have studied in your school days, history way. We are all living in that Stone Age. Hunters, food gatherers. Do we need money? Do we need money? Just imagine it's the evolution of human beings. We are in the Stone Age. Everyone happens to be no family, nothing as such. Everyone is a hunter and food gatherer. Do we need money? No. And imagine a scenario where everyone has a Kamadhenu. Do we need money? Do we need money? So when we have abundance and we have nothing, we don't need money. Isn't it? And then what purpose money serves? When you have Kamadhenu, you don't need money. Akshay Patra, you don't need money. When you are simply that barbaric citizen, barbarian, okay, something like in a Stone Age, you don't need money because you hardly have anything to exchange. Why do we need money? What purpose money serves? What's the basic purpose of money? What do you call it as money? Why do you say this particular note as a money? How do you define money? Money is something which has value. So by that logic, everything has a value. This has a value and this has a value. Of course, even this is something, okay, I could exchange. Don't you like to give me your pen for this marker? That's it. What I'm saying, this is something could be exchanged.
It has to be official.
By that logic, Bitcoin is a currency. Yes, that's how Bitcoin is defined, cryptocurrency. I'm not going to speak about cryptography. Maybe your science and technology teacher, someone will be discussing blockchain and but Bitcoin, it's called cryptocurrency. What do you mean by cryptography by that matter? I mean, how many of your engineers, lot many, you know the difference between encoding, decoding and cryptography? If you encode a data and you have given a proper key, you could decode it. But cryptography works in one direction. You have a hash and simply hash that particular, you go for hashing of a particular data and you get a key generated out of that particular algorithm and you cannot decode it. Never. It's impossible. What kind of algorithm you have different kinds of algorithms. Hash 256, SHA algorithms, different kinds of algorithms. So it's a cryptography and it's a currency. You might, many times that's how what you might heard. And is there anyone in the class who happens to see Bitcoin? Did you touch and feel Bitcoin any point of time in your life? No. If someone says this is Bitcoin, he is be fooling you. Bitcoin never exists physically. It is only something some crazy minds in online platform has come up with their own currency. That's it. See, currency or money is simply what people believe as money. Money is what people believe as money. That's it. Okay, see, the day Mr. Narendra Modi, November 8th of 2016 said, "Jo bhi money aapke paas hai, is not going to be money. You need to remonetize. Come back to the bank and explain how did you make money and take a fresh note." And then he has come up with a beautiful, colorful note called 2000, which was not existing prior to November 8th. And he said, "This is money." And I believed it's money. I believed it's money just because not Narendra Modi said. I believed it as money because I believed you people also believe it as money. Isn't it? I believe that you people believe as money. You believe that I believe it as money. Isn't it? Get it, friends? Imagine if I'm skeptical that if I take this currency note and simply tender it for something and the other party doesn't accept it, then I cannot believe it as money. Isn't it? Since Narendra Modi ended up saying, the government of India ended up saying, that's the reason we all believed in money. So that's the basic reason the currency note, though it's printed and circulated by RBI, you might have come across. There is a statement that simply says, it's simply guaranteed by the central government. You might have seen on the top of it, Reserve Bank of India, but guaranteed by the central government. So it's the government says it's money. And we all believed it is money. And since you believe it as money and you believe I believe as money, we all call it money. Money is what people believe as money. That's it. But if I tender this same 200 rupees note across the country, no person in this country has a right to refuse. Because this is a legal tender. Legally, I can tender, I can exchange this for settling any transaction. By using any 200s, I can settle 2 lakh rupees debt, 20 lakh rupees debt by using. This is a legal tender. Does mean if I pay to auto guy, he say, no, I don't accept rupees, I only accept dollars. No, he cannot say. Legally, in this country, no person has a right to refuse, I don't accept in Indian currency, because this is a legal tender as per the government of India. That's the basic reason the currency in my pocket, this is said to be called as a fiat currency. Fiat currency does mean? Fiat currency. Fiat currency simply does mean currency. It is currency because of law, by order of the government. This currency doesn't have an intrinsic value. Intrinsic does mean as well an inbuilt value. If Modi Saab says, hey, look, this is not going to be currency. Let's say today evening he again come back at 8 o'clock. Yesterday he addressed the nation at 8 o'clock. Today I hope 8 o'clock happens to be his lucky number. 8 p.m. Every day he drops the bomb at 8 p.m. Isn't it? What currency, demonetization 8 p.m. and yesterday. Similar today he came at 8 p.m. and said whatever the colorful notes you have is not the currency no longer. From this point of time, the beach sand could be used as a currency. Beach sand. We have around 5,000, 6,100 kilometers of coastal line. Isn't it? And Gujarat has the longest coastline, and it is the second state happens to be Andhra Pradesh. So he said, why the hell printing currency and circulating is going to be a headache and waste of paper and ink? Okay, let us save trees, use beach sand as a currency. And today evening he ended up saying, no longer this is a currency, okay, we can use beach sand as a currency. Now what do you think you would be doing with this 200? This is something I cannot even make a paper boat to ensure my kid would be playing with it. This is not enough to even make a paper boat. Then what the hell am I going to do it? But in good old days when gold used to be currency and king says no longer gold is a currency, TK. I could gift it to my so that she could convert it into an ornament. But again if I simply say, he says this is no longer, and 2000 is simply, okay, 1 centimeter this right, okay, length and width. That's it. Even 2000 rupee ke saath I could not make anything. Get my friends, I am very good at paper craft. But thing is that I cannot make use of it. It doesn't have an intrinsic value. But I believe it is a 200. The reason I believe it is you believe it as a currency. Currency is what people believe as a currency. So some tech savvy guys within this internet have come across and they said, let's simply make transactions. Let's settle all transactions using these bitcoins. So I believe you believe it as a currency and you believe I believe it as a currency. Henceforth, let's use this as a currency. Similarly, you all people come together and simply end up coming with your own currency. What's that currency? Simple. Objective questions for UPSC. So it does mean if this lady want to borrow any notes from this lady because she missed the class, she is going to settle but that transaction by simply exchanging some objective question for UPSC. That's the currency. Just imagine you all made up your mind. You all together have concluded, until we all people succeed in civil services. For the next 1 year, any transaction or any exchange between you people, for that matter any good or service, would be facilitated through a medium of exchange that is objective question for UPSC. And you assign a value for every objective question. Economic objective question too costly because they are very few in number, so 2000 rupees. One economic question is 2000. History question सबसे सस्ता है because Akbar का बेटा, Akbar का पापा, Akbar का first wife, second wife, third wife, too many questions. इसका grandpa too, you can ask too many. So वो तो cheaper है. So वो तो 1 rupee economic question ना 2000. बीच में polity question. Okay, isn't that's how you assign the value? So now if this lady wanna settle transaction for 2000, she can give her one economic question, or simply some 4000 polity questions or geography questions, and that's how you can settle transactions. And until she believes that lady is going to accept that, that's a currency. You know what I'm saying? But the problem is simple. The same economic question is what she could also use it to pay to this lady. Isn't it? If I have 2000 and I tender for something, I don't have the no longer 2000. But she has an economic question, she can simply copy paste the same question. One question and the same question for this lady. And at the end of the day, what is going to happen? Everyone has the same amount of data bank. Isn't it? You have the same economic questions, she has the same economic questions, and he has the same economic questions, and everyone has the same polity questions, everyone has the same history questions. Now imagine if this lady says, hey, look, I am going to give you 10 economic questions, then she would be saying, Madam, mera pass already hai. Okay, what is the basic problem? Everyone has an abundant questions, everyone has abundant supply of money, then there would no exchange. Your questions in your pocket loses value. That's what I mean to say. When money becomes abundant, it loses value. Yes or no? Something has value only when it is scarce. Imagine this, Akshit, okay, this is a day of Varalakshmi Ratham, and Varalakshmi Devi really came and simply has asked this all the ladies in the class, I am going to give you a boon. What is that boon? Touch anything that turns to become gold. Okay, until the next Varalakshmi Ratham. Okay, there are too many Varalakshmis in the class, isn't it? So I am going to give you a boon. What is the boon? You touch anything that turns to become gold. So what do you think these ladies would be doing until the next 1 year? So they keep touching everything they come across. Isn't it? Wo to bus ja rahe hain, they would be touching it. Okay, the very first thing they would be touching is all the chairs. This turns to become gold. Then what happens to the price of gold? That's it. That's what it is. Okay, if something becomes surplus, it loses its time. That's it. Okay, diamond is a carbon compound. Coal is a carbon compound. Diamond is a carbon compound. Coal is a carbon compound, isn't it? But why is diamond traded at a higher price? Rare, scarce, that's it. So when something becomes abundant, it loses its shine, that's it. Okay, what's wrong if beach sand is being used as currency? Both people in Visakhapatnam, if you ask them, how much would you like to pay for my 1 hour of lecture? Those people of Visakhapatnam would be saying, sir, take truckload. But if I ask those people in Valley of Kashmir how much you would like to pay, they will be saying not half a tablespoon. Your class is not worth half a tablespoon to me because the beach sand is too costly to me because I don't have any beach very near to my Valley of Kashmir. Get you what I'm saying? But I asked this lady from Vishakhapatnam, how much, madam? How much? Said whatever you want to. Wo to Ramakrishna beach hai na, you take 10 truckloads and take. Isn't it? Okay, so that's the problem. So that's what this statement simply says. You get what I'm saying? So that's the one reason many of you might be having a doubt. If the government and RBI has a right to print and circulate money, why not the government eliminate poverty by simply printing currency and depositing 1 crore rupees into every person's bank account? Because that obviously have any effect. Because too much of money and too less goods and services. Too much money chasing too few goods and services. Abhi to wo chai 5 rupees hai. Then everyone has a 1 crore rupees in hand. The chai happens to be 5,000 rupees. That's it. Chai happens to be 5,000 because every person has the buying capacity of the same chai because everyone has 1 crore in bank account. Following what I'm saying? So now the same chai, too many people are demanding it and there is no enough goods and services to be traded. What is going to be the consequence? Money loses value. Get you what I'm saying? Money loses value. That's the basic reason why does government give you a right to print your own money? Because if you have your own printing machine, everyone keeps printing. No one goes to work. People are busy printing money. And everyone is printing money and everyone is coming with the same currency, isn't it? And you have very less goods to be traded. How does it make sense? My goods, which are very scarce, compared to the money you have, tends to gain value and your currency loses value. That's it. So why these objective questions could not be used as a currency? Of course, you believe it's a currency, it's okay. But in long run, that objective question really doesn't serve the purpose because what the copy she has is the same copy everyone will be having. And initially she framed an economy question and that was 2000 and she exchanged the same 2000 with this lady and now these people have and this lady would be doing the same thing. The same 2000 economy question is what she would be using for all people. So at some point of time everyone will be having what everyone has. If everybody has what everyone has, isn't it, there is hardly anything to exchange. Following? And that's the basic reason. When money becomes surplus, it loses its value. And that's what I mean to say. Okay, since I am saying it loses its value, I am expressing it in a different way. What it can buy is going to be less and less. And that's the basic reason I said prices rise. Does mean money loses its buying capacity. That's what I mean to say prices rise. Because to purchase the same commodity, you need to tender more money. You need to tender more money because too much of money chasing too few goods. So since you are tendering large amounts of money for the same commodity, I am simply expressing it rather than money losing value. I am simply saying the other commodity experiences rise in prices. Either the other commodity experience rise in prices is nothing but your money in your hand is losing its purchasing capacity. That's what I will say. When money becomes abundant in supply, prices rise. Following what I am saying? Do you have any confusion? And when we discuss a topic called money and banking, I am going to prove mathematically how increase in money supply would lead to increase in prices. I would explain a theory called quantitative theory of demand for money and that would prove how rise in prices, how rise in supply of money leads to rise in prices. But mere intuition would help you to understand when money becomes abundant in supply, prices rise. Prices rise. When do prices rise? Because money's purchasing capacity has been lost. That's it. Get it, my friends? That's what the ninth principle of economics says.
Sir, is poverty helping?
Oh.
Poverty is helping is maintaining economic balance.
Poverty helping economic balance. What do you mean by it?
If everybody has money, everyone loses value.
Okay.
Poverty helping with that?
No. See, the value is always relative. Value is always a relative. The purchasing capacity is always a relative. You get it, my friends? So obviously, when everyone trying to become richer, everyone will be having more buying capacity, isn't it? But how come people tend to be richer when they are part of production of something? So that means when you are trying to become rich, you are also making some money. As a part of it, you are also producing some goods. So as a process of you becoming richer, you are part of producing something. So along you making money, you are also ensuring there is enough supply. So that will bring in a balance. But that you contributing any productive work, if I simply give you money, no extra production, simply money in your pocket, what's going to be the consequence? So a natural rise in well-being, a natural rise in economic growth. If you earn money, not a big deal. How are you earning money? By simply provisioning a service or by producing a good. So every time you earn money, there is a good that is to be traded, that's been produced. But without you doing any productive work, if KCR prints money and simply keeps on distributing, there is no product produced to be traded. People have too much of money. That's what it is. A natural rise in well-being really doesn't hurt, isn't it? But without any product work, if you are getting some money, that doesn't make sense, because what is that you are going to do with without any extra rise in production? Money, the very basic purpose of money, it acts as a medium of exchange. It acts as a medium of exchange. Something, say, universally people could accept it. That's it. That's the only purpose and the only basic necessity of money. Get what I'm saying? That's it. So that happens to be the 9th principle. And the 10th principle happens to be, the 10th principle, my friends, is an empirical observation. Okay, I hope you understand what's the meaning of an empirical observation is. Empirical matlab? With certain evidence and some data. Okay, so anything that, any information that you draw from some given set of data, you can say it's from an empirical observation. So many times you might have studied in a you might have studied statistics, isn't it? You might have calculated mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance. So that particular standard deviation or mode or mean, they speak about the entire data, how the data is distributed, whether it's a uniform distribution, isn't it? How much of data falls within the first, one standard deviation from the mean. You remember? Please don't look that way, because it seems to be that I am speaking about rocket science. You remember mean, median, mode. You remember about normal distribution, how the data is distributed, standard deviation. So what do those things speak about? They speak about entire data. So that's an empirical observation. I can say given set of data or given your Abhyasa marks, I can say the mean of this class happens to be 10 questions, 10 into 2, 20. With the mean of the class happens to be 40. The mean of the average of the class happens to be around 40. So that speaks what's the average performance of the class. Rather than simply listing out all the marks. And I can also say the mean happens to be, let's say, the mean is 14. It's for 20 marks and the mean is 14, and this is how the data is distributed. So in one standard deviation, and imagine, so the standard deviation happens to be 2, has been 12 to 4, 16, there are around 68.6% of people who scores this 6 speaks. Get what I'm saying? Following? So this itself speaks, how the performance of the class happens to be. And you remember this is what's called normal distribution. So this man happens to be a man, a very popular economist by name Phillips. Arthur Phillips happens to be the person who has come up with this particular empirical observation. He happens to observe over 50 years of data, of some Western European nations. In these Western European nations, looking at the economic data, he has come up with a conclusion. He has drawn some inference. What is that inference? It's simple. He says, in the short run, there is a trade-off. There is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment. That's it. So he says there is a trade-off. Trade-off does mean something for something. At times of, he means to say, as per my observation, at times of high inflation, I happen to observe low unemployment in these nations. That's over a short term. And at times these economies experienced less inflation. He means to say I happen to observe a very high unemployment. And what is an inflation is? The phenomenon of rise in prices of goods and services. So when the prices of goods and services keeps rising, we call it an inflation, and the opposite to inflation is what we call as a deflation, or you can call it a negative inflation. When prices rise, we call it an inflation. When prices fall, we call it a deflation or negative inflation. So this man happened to say, in a given span, over a short period of time, at times when observed there is a high rise in prices, when the economy is experiencing inflation, I happen to observe in that particular society there is a less unemployment. And who is said to be an unemployed?
The one who is able to work and not get the work.
Yeah?
The one who can work but is not getting the work.
Very good. So before defining who is said to be unemployed, let me define who is said to be qualified as a labor force. Heard about this definition called labor force? About term called labor force? How do you define a labor force? Okay, before you give me the proper explanation for a labor force, my simple question, do you believe you are part of labor force of this country? Do you believe you are part of labor force of this country? Yes or no? Do you believe I am part of the labor force of this country? Yes or no? So what might have made you say we all believe we all belong to the labor force? So bike number 5055. So yeah, so they say you have parked it in a wrong place. Okay, so either give him a key, you would be parking it in proper. Okay, labor force. So how do you define labor force? Who is said to be part of labor force? So generally, my friends, we do say labor force. Okay, in India, anyone who falls within the legal working age group. Legal working age group, somewhere 14 to 64. This is the legal working age group. It doesn't mean beyond 64 you cannot earn your. Ideally, we think there is no point in a person because हमारे life expectancy is 66 years. And in a country where life expectancy is 66 years, if you are expected to work at 70, it doesn't make any sense. So 5 to 14, below 14 we say he is a child labor and employment of child labor is prohibited in this country. So those people who are willing to work, given an opportunity, those people who are willing to work and who fall within the legal working age group, they are said to constitute a labor force. Okay, you should be willing to work. But if you are somewhere at 25 and you say, no, I don't have any reason to work because my grandfather has accumulated, 3,000 crores and who the hell is going to spend it? I am busy spending that money. Why the hell you would be expect me to go to college and learn that stupid math and physics? I don't want to go. I don't want to get imparted any skill. Okay, मेरा पास ज़्यादा पैसे, so I don't want to go and work. He would not constitute labor force. Someone who is willing to take up a job and who falls within legal working age group, given an opportunity, getting my friends, who is willing to work, is said to be part of a labor force. That's the basic reason. Modi Saab, whenever he is abroad, he keeps on simply thumping his chest, saying, using this word called demographic dividend. What do you mean by demography? Demography is nothing but study of population. Dividend is simply the returns on the investment. You plow some investments, you plow seeds, you collect fruits. That's it. Okay, if you have abundant young people, my dear friends, India generally is said to be one of the youngest country. Youngest country doesn't mean, it's not measured based upon your history and based upon your civilization. It is because the country has abundant population who falls within a very, within this, somewhere the median age of Indians happens to be around 27. But if you look at most of the Western economies, something like to the Far East in Japan, they are experiencing aging. The median age of Russian happens to be 44. Hamara is hardly 27. So there is abundant people who falls within this productive age group in this country. And that's the basic reason this man simply says, we are going to reap dividend out of it. In fact, my country is going to be a factory of labor for the rest of the world in coming 10 to 20 years. Because every nation across the world is experiencing a problem of aging. The average age of the people is rising because of life expectancy is increasing. In Japan, people life expectancy happens to be 88 years. And in South Korea, it's 89 years. And they happen to be highly developed nations. The people, their lifestyle happens to be very costly and the cost of living is too costly, and that's the reason people also prefer well-established people. And these countries have attained population stability long back. Population stabilization does mean wherein the birth rates happens to be equal to mortality rates. Does mean the IRMs equals to the GIRMs. In such a case, does mean the country attains population stabilization. We Indians are expecting the population in India would be stabilized somewhere in 2070. We are in 2019. So there's 51 years to be waiting. And India happens to be that lucky country which receives $70 billion per annum in the name of private remittances from abroad. A country which receives the highest amount of remittances from abroad. $70 billion. Now imagine if these abundant young people, who are going to go abroad and work in Far East and Far West and Central Asia, they all make money, send back to this country, my country would become prosperous nation. That's the basic reason. We are going to yield demographic dividend. Dividend has been returns on the investments. So in good old days, people used to think abundant population or too much of population is going to be a burden on the society. Now this human resource is treated almost equal to, better than the natural resource, isn't it? Got it, friends? So now we happen to be, Mr. Modi happens to assume that this nation is going to be a factory of skilled pool of labor. So the Japanese is going to expect those people. The Americans are going to, 40% of obviously people in NASA are Indians. Isn't it? Who knows, down the line by 10 years. Isn't it? These Americans eating too much of pizzas, their particular fat content is increasing, brain stopped working, too much of video games, addicted, and that's the basic reason. Every damn, intellectual aspect happens to be from an average Indian itself. So 90% of NASA engineers could be Indians. Isn't it? Even we would be operating Pentagon, White House. Isn't it? So that could be the reason. Sooner or later we are anyway purchasing United Kingdom. Because it happens to be the most indebted country in the entire Europe. Sooner or later, see, 2016 an Indian purchased East Indian Company. Maybe who knows, we would be purchasing United Kingdom too. Get what I'm saying? So that's the prospect and that's the talent of young people, isn't it? Look at many of you. See, there is a place in Krishna district, very near to Amravati. I don't remember the name of the village. The name of the, so people surrounding, very near to Amravati, the state capital, just Amravati is on the other side of the Krishna, and the other side of Krishna, along the highway, you need to go 2 kilometers interior, I don't know. People call that as, when I happened to hire a cab driver, that man said, sir, would you like to visit Andhra America? I said, what is Andhra America? Isn't it? So he said, sir, Andhra America, the reason why we call it an Andhra America, because in this village, there is one person from every family who happens to be in United States of America. Every family has at least one person. At least one person from every family. And that's the basic reason you happen to observe this village. You can figure it out. These people have built in individual houses. Like the way it appears. And he asked me, please do make a visit. I happen to be there for some other reason. Say, let's just take one round across this village and you would be really mesmerized. And it's true. Though these people happen to be settled in the United States of America, they ensured their parents would be living in a luxurious villa and they have built in individual houses beautifully. And how could they made it? Every person, from at least one person from every family happened to be living in the United States of America. And this is a very common thing. When I am in school days, one of guy in my hometown happened to fly abroad for MS. The entire city has come together to garland and felicitate that fellow. Someone going abroad for higher education. But these days, isn't it? You can't get any PG seat in India, you just fly abroad. That's it. Medicine, China, Russia, Uzbekistan. Isn't it? Same is the case for MS, some stupid university, America. That's it. Get my friends, that's it. So those days it used to be very, only elite used to. But abhi and now look at how much money these people are making sending back, and that's the basic advantage. $70 billion is what we receive per annum for private remitters, the highest. And imagine these abundant people are also going to be employed. Then definitely we are going to make huge amount of money. So that's what I mean to say, labor forces. Who is ready to give an opportunity and who falls with. Out of these people who are not able to find some work. So if you take the working population, if you subtract these people who are as of now working, lucky to get a job, what you get is unemployed. And how do you calculate unemployment rate? Divide it by total labor force and multiply by 100, what you get is unemployment rate. So 5% of unemployed doesn't mean 5% of Indians are unemployed. 5% of labor force is unemployed. Get what I'm saying? When I say unemployment in India is 10%, not 10% of Indians are unemployed. 10% of labor force is unemployed. Get what I'm saying? So how do you calculate it? Labor force minus working population by labor force. Because labor force minus working population gives you unemployed. Unemployed divided by labor force into 100 gives you unemployment rate. Understood? Any confusion? So that's what it is. Never ever simply presume that when I say unemployment happens to be rising, 10%, it doesn't mean 10% of all Indians are unemployed. 10% of labor force is unemployed. And what is this empirical observation of this particular person is simple. At times of high inflation, a phenomenon of rising prices, he says, look, there's a very less unemployment. So this is an empirical. So given a data, he was able to conclude this. But now if you have drawn some inference out of the data, you need to substantiate. You all have numbers. At the end of the day, you have some numbers, and you have drawn some conclusion. You have drawn some conclusion. And if you want to explain your conclusion, I mean substantiate why you have concluded this. Of course, numbers speak, but how did this happen? So, iske liye he happened to use one of the most popular technique in business and economics, like you have been taught in your school days. In fact, this is what I am going to use in the entire economic classes. Something called backtracking. Okay, solving problem through backtracking techniques. See, you might have come across a story. Okay, how many of you understand Telugu? Do all of you? Is there anyone who doesn't understand Telugu? Okay, TK, no issue. Okay, let's imagine, okay, the story, I don't know whether you people have been taught, the story of a king. He has 7 sons. And these 7 sons went for hunting. And these 7 sons brought in a fish. And they dried this fish. One fish has not been dried. Isn't it? So then the one who is responsible for ensuring the fish to be dried has been asked, why is it so? So he said, a heap of grass, I mean that has been under the shadow of a heap of grass. Then why didn't you remove that grass? Because I happened to forget to feed that particular grass. I didn't remove the grass because that's been under the shadow. I didn't happen to remove that grass from the heap because I'm busy with something else. Isn't it? See, the problem is one fish has not been dried. That's my problem. Isn't it? How do you solve the problem? And if you really want to solve the problem, you should know the root cause of the problem. That's what our grandparents have taught us somewhere at the age of 4 and 5. And that's been what is taught in modern days in business schools as something called solving problem by simply backtracking. Figure out the root cause. The reason why doctors expect you to go for a diagnosis, isn't it? Generally you go to an RMP doctor. You say I am having a rise in temperature. What do you think you would be saying? Dolo 650, 3 times in a day. Chal, 10 rupees de do. But if you go to a specialist, what do you think he would be doing? No, let's go for a diagnosis. Let's try to figure it out. What's the basic root cause? Because fever or rise in temperature of the body is a symptom for any damn disease. Isn't it? For any damn thing, it could be swine flu, it could be common flu, it could be typhoid, it could be malaria. Har ek cheez ke liye symptom happens to be rise in temperature. But if you generally visit an RMP doctor, what do you say? Paracetamol, Dolo, 650, 3 times in a day. 10 rupees de do. Bas. But if you happen to be a specialist, what do you think he would be doing? He will be diagnosing the disease. Tries to figure out the root cause of the disease. And that's how he tries to address the problem. Get you what I'm saying? So that's how things are solved in life or also in basically the problem. So many a time, see, one guy happened to say, sir, I used to do very good for the first 2 months, but these days I'm not really doing good. What do you want me to do? Okay, I said, is there any problem? He said, no sir, I have 2 girlfriends, that happens to be the problem. I was not able to give enough time for my study. Then see, solve a problem lies in those 2 girlfriends, then छोड़ दो and किसी और को ढूंढो, बीच में time मिलेगा ना. That's the solution, isn't it? So if you really want to solve the problem, you should know the root cause of the problem. And that's what been taught, okay, at our school days, I mean 4 or 5, but we are not aware of the fact that's been what is going to solve major problems in your life. And that's what is going to be used in my class to explain everything that happens in economics. Solving problems by backtracking, trying to figure out what's the basic reason behind it. So the reason here in this case, why the ship has not, okay, fish has not been dried, this is been under the shadow of a heap of grass. Why didn't he remove the heap of grass? Because he didn't feed it to the cattle. Why didn't he do it? Because he was busy taking care of the kid. Okay, the reason why he did it, the kid is crying. Why is the kid crying? He tried to poke some fun at an ant. Isn't the ant has bitten him, and that's the basic reason. So if the kid would have been taken care, so he doesn't poke fun at ant, this problem of fish not getting dried would not happen, isn't it? So better take care of the kids so that this would not get repeated. That's the problem. That's the solution. Get what I'm saying? And this is what we are going to use in the entire economic classes. In almost all modern business schools teach the same thing. Solving problems by backtracking. This is what is a very common backward induction. I don't know how many of you happen to be from business school. That's what is popular known as backward induction. Okay. So many decisions could be simplified by taking backward induction. Okay, following. So now coming back, how did this man said? See, what is he ended up, his conclusion is at times of high inflation. So what is inflation? Does mean rise in prices. Keep it in mind, when I use small p, it does mean rise in price. When I use capital P, it does mean rise in production. At least for one time, you write it as price and beach mein bracket, okay, you write it as P. You got it, my friends? So I am not going to write it as rise in price and all these things. I use this. Okay, at least for one time, because once you try to copy the way I have written it and try to Google it, you don't get it exactly, isn't it? Okay, later point of time I'll be writing NTR for non-tax revenue and you search it, you get those two NTRs. Isn't it? So it's simply a short form. I use it for my convenience, but that's not an official acronym for non-tax revenue. Okay? So at least for one time you write it. So price rise. This phenomenon is what is called inflation. This phenomenon is what is called inflation. And he say, why is there a rise in price? Because of mismatch in demand and supply. Because of mismatch in demand and supply. So the reason, see, imagine a scenario where the demand rises and supply relatively remains constant. Just imagine, supply is changing but not to the extent of demand. What would be the consequence? Prices rise. You know? Or imagine demand remains constant but for one reason supply has fallen. Bad monsoon, no enough onions. What happens? Prices rise. Isn't it? Following, in both the cases, price rise. Or imagine demand has come down. Demand has come down, but supply remained constant. Supply remained constant, demand has come down. Okay. So what happens? Sometimes it happens with gift and goods. Wherein see every person happens to be very rich, then we don't prefer to use public road transportation. Isn't it? See, every person in the country is making an income of 1 lakh rupees. Then none of the people would like to prefer boarding that particular RTC buses. No? Isn't it? So when demand falls, when though supply remains constant, that leads to rise in fall in prices. And demand remain constant, but supply enormously raised. Abundance. Following. So these are the two things that might happen. So that's the reason I said the price is simply that is determined based upon the interaction of demand and supply forces. So he thought it's a rise in prices. So that could be because of any of these two things happening. Okay, the rise in price could be because of any of these two phenomena. Either there might be enormous rise in demand and supply has not able to catch up the demand, or the demand has remained constant but the supply tremendously happened to fall. So any of these two things might have led to rise in prices. Following? Get what I'm saying? Okay, so when I mean to say supply, so you might be thinking, whether demand hai to, what's wrong in meeting the demand by producing more? But in reality, my friend, just because there is a demand, you don't expect people to produce enough to meet the demand. The reason is simple, it's not practically possible. The reason is resource constraint. Okay, the land of India, the total land under cultivation in India is much more when we have attained independence. It's around 180 million hectares. Used to be under cultivation when we attained independence, and those days 60 crore people. And now the land under cultivation has come from 180 to 142 million hectares because most land is being diverted for other commercial purpose, housing and transportation infrastructure. Now the population happens to be 130 crore. Get you what I'm saying? So that's what is the resource constraint. Land has been limited. Isn't it? So though imagine you think annexing that Pakistan and simply Bangladesh, even Pakistan, Bangladesh doesn't only come with land, they also come with people. Isn't it? So we have not any part of the world. The land has been limited, but the population that is to be fed on the land is increasing. Isn't it? And that too, the standard of well-being of the people of India is also increasing. Their ability to consume more goods and services is also increasing. So the same land is also has to feed large number of people. That obviously creates a mismatch in demand and supply. Get you what I'm saying? It's not that just because there is a rise in demand, the market is going to ensure that there will be enough supply. It's not practically possible, and since we have started simply saying scarcity is something we always experience. Okay, you really cannot expect as per my demand the market is going to meet my requirements. There would always be a friction between demand and supply, and that's what results in rise in prices. Following what I'm saying? So you might be thinking, if there is a demand, what's wrong in producing? Let the producer produce more and meet the demand so that he can make money. But in reality, it's not practically possible. You cannot catch up the ever-rising demand. There is always a restriction or constraint. The reason is we have a resource constraint, shortage of resources. Let's say you happen to be the one who is managing Eicher Motors. You know Eicher Motors? Eicher Motors is the company that produces Royal Enfield. It's a British company, my friends. Eicher Motors is the one who produces. In India, largely they sell two variants. One is the truck, heavy load truck. The other is the Royal Enfield. You happen to be the one who is the managing director of Eicher Motors. And these days you might have seen there is an enormous demand for a Royal Enfield. Because when I'm in college, Royal Enfield used to be like a tiger in a jungle. Now it is like a street dog. Too much, isn't it? So that has been, of course, there's a tremendous rise in demand. You happen to be the one who is managing it, and just because there is a rise in demand, would you end up setting too many factories to produce these ICL motors? Huh? As of now, though there is a very high demand, if you want to get that variant of your choice, you need to wait for 6 months. Why the hell customer has to wait for 6 months? Set up one more factory in East Godavari, West Godavari, Krishna district, Guntur district, start meeting the demand. Is it a viable solution? Why? There is a demand. Why the hell you expect customer to wait for 6 months? Try to increase your production. Set up more production units and try to meet the demand by supplying more and more motors. What's wrong in it? Pardon? Yeah, the demand, whatever has been now is not persistent. Isn't it? Abhi to it's a Royal Enfield. Who knows? Imagine to capture these markets, Harley Davidson also come up with a low variant bike, which is also at 2 lakh rupees. Get what I'm saying? Now imagine to capture the Indian market, Harley Davidson releases a bike at 2 lakh rupees. And 1.85 lakh if you are spending on Royal Enfield and 15,000 extra pay if you are getting Harley Davidson, a low variant bike, people obviously shift for Harley. The one who purchases a Royal Enfield is not the one who is looking for efficiency and mileage. By default, the one he is not looking for mileage, he is looking for style quotient, prestige. Yes or no? No one simply says, sir, mileage is the best compared to Activa. The reason why I opted for Royal Enfield compared to an Activa, mileage. Then that means there is something wrong with the person. Isn't it? So he is simply trying to own the bike just as a matter of prestige. And he likes it. And he is fulfilling his want. You want to commute from your hostel to institute, you can walk like the way I do. Because I don't get a chance to walk, I just prefer to walk from my home to this. Because my home is hardly 200 meters away. If I use a bike or car, there is really no point in my day, entire day, because 6:30 to evening 8 o'clock, I would be in class or I would be in office. So that's the basic, I prefer to walk. You get me, friends? But if I choose to ride this 200 meters in a BMW, it's purely luxury. It's not a necessity. I can walk, I can simply ride a bicycle. But if I opt for a BMW, and I keep complaining petrol prices are rising, I don't have a right to complain petrol prices rising when I am commuting distance 200 meters in a BMW or a Ferrari. Get what I'm saying? So the same is the case. 1.85 lakh तक के ICE models के Royal Enfield है, अगर 2 lakhs में अभी Harley Davidson मिलेगी तो people opt for it. So it does mean that. So look at my friends. When I'm in college, Pulsar happens to be the most sought after bike. Pulsar. When now you are in college, and when your kids are in college, it's going to be definitely Harley Davidson or maybe BMW. BMW also sells bike. It could be. Who knows? Isn't it? So it's not that, you think that there is a demand, henceforth people end up supplying more. You get it, my friends? So all of you become hardcore non-veggies and everyone is hanging up of a KFC outlet. Where does KFC get enough chicken for it? Unless the poultry farm is producing more chicken. Isn't it? So that's the basic reason. So you cannot anticipate every time there is a demand, the market is going to ensure enough supply. There would always be a friction between demand and supply. So now he thought there might be rise in price, that's the reason inflation, and that inflation could be because of any of these two reasons. But which reason has to be taken into consideration? He opted for the first rather than second. Why did he opt for the first? Because he also happened to observe that during this period of time, these economies are experiencing enormous growth rates. Very high growth rates. So when there is a high growth, what do you mean by growth in an economy? Rise in production. Rise in production. So when there is a rise in production, there is a rise in employment. Isn't it? So that's the basic reason. He thought the rise in prices is because of rise in demand compared to that of supply. There is an enormous rise in demand. Why is there is more rise in demand? Because the rise in consumption. And why is there is more rise in consumption? Simply the same problem. That's what I mean say backward induction. Backtracking. Like the same story. Simply and keep it in mind, economics is like a cow story. Guy ka essay. I don't know how many of you have come up with this. In my school days, I am very poor at Hindi. Very poor. Because I used to always think, why should I learn Hindi? Because I happen to already read speak in my mother tongue. I hardly come across any person who speaks to me in Hindi, except my Hindi teacher. So I always used to think, I want to become, I like mathematics. So iske alawa I used to think everything is a nonsense. And when I'm in college, I used to think, okay, learn economics, and I used to think, iske alawa everything is a nonsense. And in fact, my friends, economics happens to be the most easiest, the most useful, and the most interesting for me, at least. Get it, my friends? So I think, why the hell? And very poor at Hindi. So I only by-hearted guy ka essay, cow ka essay. Cow has 4 legs, a tail. Cow gives milk. Milk ke saath kheer banegi, isn't it? And kheer ke saath, okay, milk ke saath wo to ye sab kuch. That's the only thing I know. Now given an essay and paid, tree. So I used to say, because I don't know, okay, I know paid does matlab a tree. But since I know the essay of cow, what do you say? There is a tree at my home. Tied to the tree there is a cow, and cow has 4 legs, cow gives milk. अरे सड़क का ऐसे तो सड़क के मेरा पाके मेरा गाँव के घर का पास सड़क के beside the road there is a tree, and try to tree there is a cow. So same is the case. Poor economics is a cow story, because no matter what topic we are discussing, development, growth, welfare measures, no matter what the hell we discuss, monetary policy, fiscal policy, banking, anything for that matter, we all end up at the same conclusion. How does these things have an impact on growth of my country? Sabka cost story hai. How does it going to influence my growth? Because what all matters for a society, how much is the rise in production, how many people get benefit out of it, how much is the income earned by those people, how much they spend, and that all could be happen only when the economy is experiencing growth. So poor economy is all about cost story. So no matter whatever the topic we are going to discuss, we are always going to conclude how it is going to affect the growth of this country. We all end up with the same cow story. Get what I'm saying? Okay, so tomorrow when I use this something called cow story, you can obviously take into consideration that I'm speaking about the growth of an economy. Following? So he means to say the consumption is rising. Why is the consumption rising? Maybe the income of people is rising. People have more income. Why is the people, how come people have more income? Maybe the employment happens to be rise. How come the employment rise? Maybe the economy is producing more. And how did you get to know? I can look at from the growth rates. I can look at from the data, there is a growth in the economy. Get what I'm saying? I can look at from the data, there is a growth in the economy. Compared to last year, they produced more goods and services. Growth is simply a measure of rise in production. Last year, this society produced 100 guns. This year, they produced 110 guns. 10 upon 100 is a 10% rise in growth. When you produce an extra gun, does mean you might have either employed a labor, you might have either employed a land, either you might have employed some capital, some entrepreneur might have extra produced it, isn't it? So you cannot simply increase your production without any extra employment of resources. Following? So he happened to say, "Arey is 50 years ka data mera paas hai, and this says there is a tremendous growth in the country. Arey growth hai to, and I also happen to see there is another inflation." So he said, "Let me start from an inflation. The inflation is all about rise in prices, and the price is all about rise in demand to that of supply. And that's because of rise in consumption. And that's because of rise in income. And that's because of rise in employment. Why is there more employment? Because of more production taking place. Why is there more production taking place? Because more growth in the economy. And that number speaks. Following? Okay. Clear, my friends? So it does mean every time there is a high rise in prices, he happened to see the employment is less. By default, the unemployment happens to be low. Isn't it? Employment rising does mean unemployment is always low. So that's how he said, at times I observe high prices. There is a less unemployment. Following? Okay. So how could it be? Because the economy is experiencing growth. And when an economy is experiencing growth, it is not necessary that the growth of an economy is sustained forever and ever. Isn't it? Generally, every economy experiences a cyclical effect. Like your academics. Okay, it's not like if I ask you plot your economic career, okay, performance, how many of you have this? Let's say this is from KG to PG. And this is your percentage, GPA, CGPA, any damn nonsense. How many of you have this particular economic performance of this kind? You started at 0 and your PG you ended at 99%. Okay, how many of you have this consistent performance? 90%. LKG, UKG, first and second. They are an exception. There might be one in a class. Okay, how many of you have this kind of performance? Raise your hands. Very good, fantastic. At least one. I said that's what. There is always one. Don't look at it. Okay, you don't need to. Okay, not so interesting, my friends. There would be, isn't it? But very rare. Very rare. Most of us would be having this sine curve. And that's what a cyclical effect is. Okay, the rise and fall. And this is alternating. isn't it? What times you have 90%, sometimes this comes to 70%, isn't it? Mostly, at least in engineering, you might have observed. Okay, as soon as most of the time, if you happen to look at and observe in IITs, South Indians have this typical phenomena. What happens? Okay, since in South India, it's either IIT or simply NEET. So these kids would be groomed by the parents in such a way, starting from 4th standard, they would be taught only math, physics, chemistry. Who is aunt, who is mom, who is grandfather, सब कुछ भी नहीं जानता है. So maths, physics, chemistry. So up till Narayana Chaitanya, 14-16 hours per day, they read and they crack IIT and they enter into IIT. And they have been tuned to read for 14-16 hours. First year of engineering IIT, 4 hour time they spend in library and also make it to 8 GPA. 8 GPA. Because they continue the same pace. Because they have been tuned, 6th standard say. I know a person, one of my family friend. Okay, both of the officers happens to be a group 1 officers. Early in the morning, he wakes up 4 o'clock. He makes a tea, breakfast, and he simply also cooks some food for the kid. And 5:30, he takes that kid for a tuition. And he is simply now 6th standard. He takes a tuition for IIT preparation for maths. 6 o'clock. And he drops in and he goes to the office. 8:30, that guy would be collected by the bus at the tuition center and he would be taken to school. 5 o'clock, he comes back and the mother takes care and he would be taken to physics tuition. And he would be coming at 8 o'clock and said, "You're literally killing the freedom." I don't know whether the kid would be coming cracking IIT, but you are simply killing a greatest freedom that the kid could enjoy. What you are committing is a sin. You think you are simply trying to ensure kid who can IIT he could withstand. See, there are n number of people who has not been to IIT and successful in life. And iskeli you are killing it. Your parenting is absolutely bad. That's a debate I always have. And he stopped not inviting me for a cup of coffee later on. Because everyone is praising, beta banega IIT engineer. I said, how does it matter? Isn't even I am from IIIT, isn't it? And I also applied for civil service. I have been working for DRDO for 4 years. Still, I am good at. I am making more than what I could have made as a software engineer. You know what I'm saying? Isn't it? How does it matter? See, what I am doing has nothing to do with what I have studied. I have done my BTech in computer science and MTech in embedded systems and then masters in business administration. But what I am doing has nothing to do with what I have studied. And I am still minting money compared to what my guys who also happen to study the same engineering in my college. Okay, one of my friends is earning 3 lakhs, I am earning more than that. Not simply because of this, I am getting my friends, I am earning it. And some of my friends, they earn 6 to 7 lakhs per month in USA. I am earning coffee comfortably, equal to it, staying in India along with my parents. Isn't it? 6-7 lakhs what they earn, 3-4 lakhs goes for the house rent and sab kuch. Even they want to eat a samosa, they would be thinking, $1. In India, 70 rupees ke liye 7 samosa milta hai, isn't it? But if I want to spend, TK, 70 rupees de do, 7 samosa le lo, 30 rupees aapke paas rakho. Isn't it? So that's what is the basic reason. There is nothing like, nothing has been said, there are too many people in parliament. They not cross 3rd standard. Isn't it? So that's what it is. So what typically happens, some of South Indians, the parenting happens, so he groomed in such a way, 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 14 hours, he's only with books. So first year of engineering, these kids really hang on with it. First year of engineering, every South Indian 8 GPA. 2-1 they would be having a friend like me. Isn't it? So 8 comes to 5. Drastic fall. 2-2 it would come to 4. Then the parents get to observe. Beta kya ho raha hai? You are always a topper. Isn't it? You're also a topper. So other day I was trying to, trying to replicate my father's sign, forgery. For some reason, because I need to collect his passport. He has applied for his visa and I need to collect his passport and I didn't expect him, I didn't get the sign. So I'm trying to go for a forgery. So one of my friend asked, how could you do it? And I'm doing it from my school days. Who is going to sign my progress card? Who do you think who has signed my stupid progress card? How do you think my father would be signing it? I'm doing for it. So my father's sign is very complex. But he said, how could you do it? I can, because it's been years together. I said, didn't you do it? He said, no, I'm always the topper of the class. Then you are an exception here. You are a very rare guy, isn't it? But most of Indians are like me. You get it, my friends? So typically this is the second year first. So now parents say, beta, ye to acha nahi hai. So then what happens? Because this IIT guy might have a dream. I should be working for Microsoft. And what does Microsoft people, when they come to campus, say, minimum 7 GPA is something I expect you to sit for my pre-placement talk. 7 GPA is something expensive. But obviously 8 has come to 5, to 1. Now if you really want to make it to 7, you need to work hard, isn't it? So then 3-1 again he gets motivated and simply doing it. So now once he reaches 8, then he would again think, oh, TK, I have been done it. Then someone like me again would say, Arey now abhi to 8 hai na, chalo, party karenge. Isn't it? Now by end of 3-2, it would again come to 4. Now he was very surprised, oh my God, now I'm only, my average happens to be 5. Now again he starts doing it and gives tries. वो तो business भी होता है, isn't it? It's not like when you are making profits. You don't repeat profits forever and ever, and that profits would never be increasing, ever be lasting. Okay, look at what happened. Last quarter, Indigo reported loss. This quarter, they reported enormous profit. Why is it so? It's not because of exceptional performance of Indigo, because Jet Airways landed. Isn't it? So when I am in college, my friends, every economy teacher, every business school teacher, in those days, 2008-9, every business school people used to, in India, used to give an example of Vijay Mallya, the success. Because Vijay Mallya has lost his father at a very early age, Vittal Mallya. And Vijay Mallya happened to take over a business empire. What is that business empire? It's a brewery. Liquor manufacturing company. It is not something bread and butter. Okay, simply a brewery business is something what a guy at 16, 17 cannot manage. But this guy happened to sacrifice his young life and happened to build an empire. By 2006, okay, United Breweries. Okay, United Breweries is the name of the company which manufactures this brand. Captured 68% of the market share in India's brewery, liquor market. And he happens to purchase 12% stake in one of the world's largest brewery also. So 2008-9 is the time where people are celebrating his success. And 2008 is the time where this man Vijay Mallya happened to purchase a sword of Tipu Sultan, which is being auctioned in one of the auction house in UK. Very popular auction house. I don't recollect this name. Pardon? One of the very costly and one of the very popular auction house. It's being auctioned, and this man happened to bring it back to India by spending 6 crores. And this guy happened to be Karnataka. Tipu Sultan happens to be from very nearby, from the place he stayed, Mysore. So those days everyone is pricing. And then Vijay Mallya entered into airline industry. 1 year he entered into airline industry. Vijay Mallya happened to purchase, Kingfisher acquired a low-cost existing airline company called Deccan Aviation. There used to be a low-cost airline. In fact, Captain Gopinath is the person who happened to come with India's first low-cost airlines. Those days in my, when I am working in DRDO, it used to cost me Pune to Visakhapatnam 4,000. Pune to Hyderabad 2,000, 2,000 to here to here there. 4,000 it's a price. Somewhere in 2006-7 itself. Get my friends? So he has come up with a low-cost airline. And this low-cost airline has been acquired by this guy. So now people anticipated now Vijay Mallya is going to really bring in an enormous change in airlines. He is also going to, because people those days used to believe everything Vijay Mallya touches turns to become gold. So successful in entrepreneurs. 2008 and his story used to be the most successful celebrated story. How to do business. Now if I ask the same person, sometimes I go to Bangalore and ask those people, are you teaching the same? They say, no, we are using the same but not how to do business. Abhi to Vijay Mallya ke example hai, but we are using it to explain how not to do the business. That's what it is. You get it, my friends? You remember last class I said 14th and 15th century, we used to contribute 50% of global GDP. We and China, 40% of global trade. Abhi to hamara trade is only 1.8% of global trade. Isn't it? So there were days where milk and honey used to flow. And this is not the case. Isn't it? Ganga mein pani bhi nahi hai. How could milk and honey would be flowing? Isn't it? So that's the case, my friends. So वो तो business में होता है, आपका academic life में होता है, personal life में होता है, isn't it? So these boom and bust, the rise and fall, isn't it? The ebb and crust. Following. So that's the basic reason. So once an economy experiences sustained growth, it doesn't mean it would sustain growth forever. The growth would not be long lasting, isn't it? Following what I'm saying. So that's the basic reason. He happened to observe in some years where the growth rate happens to be not so high, or where the growth rate is low, he obviously happened to believe that does mean when the growth is less, the production happens to be less. When the production is less, the people unemployed happens to be increasing, and that has led to fall in income levels, and that fall in income levels led to fall in consumption, and fall in consumption led to fall in demand, and that fall in demand led to fall in prices. Following. That's how he explained his basic inference that he has drawn from his empirical data. You get it, my friends? And this kind of explanation is what I say simply by explaining through backward induction or backtracking. This happened because of this happened because of this, and all that it is because, okay, the fluctuation in growth. So at the time when the economy is experiencing more growth, there would be more employment and results in high rise in prices. At times when the economy is growing at a very lesser pace, there will be high unemployment that will lead to deflation. Falling prices. No one want to buy something because no one has a pen. So that's how he ended up saying all that matters for an economy is growth. Following that empirical relation that's been established by this person is very popular, known as Phillips curve, which has been given in your copy. Following. So it does mean there's an inverse relation between inflation and unemployment over a short run. Got it, friends? Clear? Okay, and it's an empirical observation. It's not necessary. It always happens to be true in all the cases. The rise in prices could also be a phenomenon because of fall in supply. Isn't it? It's not always because of rising demand. It could also be because of falling supply. That could also lead to rise in prices. But here in this context, he happened to observe there is an enormous growth. And that growth might have been led to pumping the prices because too much of employment, too much of money, too much of spending. Get what I'm saying? Do you all believe when your income levels rise, your spending capacity also rises? Your propensity to consume would always be positive, yes or no? With rising income, your propensity to consume is always positive. Yes or no? You like to consume more. Isn't it? As of you, Papa is sending only 10,000 or 20,000 bucks. That's the basically your visit to IMAX happens to be only once in a month. Again, if it is 1 lakh rupees per month, you would never come to class. Hangover. Isn't it? So half of you would not be coming to the class because of hangover. 1 lakh rupees per month. Getting what I'm saying? But the frequency at which you visit a pub or a disco these days happens to be only once in a month. Celebrate party of some birthday. Get what I'm saying? But 1 lakh rupees per month every day is a birthday. किसी का और का गांधी का बर्थडे सेलिब्रेट, सरदार जी का लेट्स सेलिब्रेट, है ना, किसी और को गर्लफ्रेंड का बर्थडे लेट्स सेलिब्रेट. Isn't it? Get my friends, वरलक्ष्मी व्रतन को भी सेलिब्रेट कर दो. Isn't it? So, but there is something wrong when you and me celebrate it. Isn't it? So these people can say. Following what I'm saying, so that's what it is. So the propensity to consume would always be positive. When your income levels goes high, people tend to consume more. And that's the basically he ended up saying this is typically the thing might have happened in those years, and that's how he drawn the conclusion. What's the conclusion? In short run, there is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So this ends up the 10 basic principles of economics. My dear friends, no matter whatever the topic we will be discussing in the coming classes, would be based upon these 10 fundamental principles. It's something like you can take it as a 10 commandments. Okay, we are not going to deviate or we are not going to move anything out of the purview of these 10 principles. Everything that we will discuss could be explained using these 10 principles. Yeah.
But it did not sustain this.
Pardon?
Treatment and then they...
No, that's what I'm saying. An empirical observation could not be, it's not, see, when you go for an empirical observation, that's based upon the data that's been collected, what happened in the past. What happened in the past might not always be replicated in the future, isn't it? Getting my friends? But in reality, if you look at it in practice, this is a very common phenomenon that you always could observe. No matter whatever could be the country, at times of high growth, mere intuition would help you to understand that leads to low unemployment, and that leads to deliberate in prices. Don't you think so?
No, but his conclusions did not sustain. Like he was criticized then.
And of course, that's what I'm saying. He always said it a short run. But what is that short run? He cannot explain. What is that short run? Okay, 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months. He was not able to. Isn't it? And how do you differentiate? Is there any particular time period where you say this is short run in long run? No, he said sometimes I observe this. But is it going to be true in the long run? He was not able to. Get it, my friends? But that's the reason. That point, see, I'm not simply saying this happens to be correct, but your intuition could say. Okay, in general, the reason is inflation is always a short-term phenomenon. If inflation sustains for a longer run, the economy is going to be screwed up. Look at what's happening in Venezuela. Get it, my friends? Venezuela, people are simply dumping their currency on the roads because the currency has become really worthless. This is the same case in 2012 in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, literally in the toilets, they used to paste a notice. Government used to paste a notice. Only toilet paper should be used in toilet, but not Zimbabwe currency. Because the currency of Zimbabwe has become so worthless compared to the toilet paper. So even you might have seen in your old history textbook, again if you have opened an NCERT textbook, you can find soon after the World War when the guy is explaining the impact on the German, because they have been asked to pay $6,000 million war indemnity, and because of such a huge amount of burden, you can see the inflation in Germany is so high. You can see a picture, a colorful picture where a kid is flying a kite made of German Deutschmark. The kite is made of a German Deutschmark. That means the currency you require to buy a kite is going to be much lesser than what is required for, or is going to be much higher than what's required for making a kite with it. So imagine if I simply make a kite to my kid using $2,000, it doesn't mean that I am very rich, super rich. Maybe I either should be a crazy guy, or because the currency I am using it might have been worthless. Okay, so inflation happens to be always a short run, has to be tackled in the very short run, or else it's going to screwing up the entire economy. So his observation happens to be short run, but the only problem is what the short run, how much is the time? That's what it is. In long run is also going to be true. He was not able. So that's the reason there is also a variant of Phillips curve, which is a long run curve. Okay, but I don't want to go into it because this is not going to be an optional class. Let's following my friends. But this is something your mere intuition could say. Whether it's a short run, long run, but if this happens, that's obvious. This could be the phenomena. Yes or no? At times of high growth, the economy tends to experience. The reason why, my dear friends, what you have paid for a shirt is what your parents has paid. Isn't it? You get it, friends? So that's the case. What your rupee can purchase today is what the rupee you used to purchase 10 years back, and what is rupee is going to purchase 10 years later. So inflation is always a phenomenon that happens, and that is always a result of people making more money and with a rise in growth of an economy. That's the basic reason. Following what I'm saying? So this sets up the 10 basic principles which we are going to use it as the basic principles for explaining various aspects.